talk for some minutes about this new project, but first let me introduce myself. I'm Mauro Boldi and I work for TIM Telecom Italia since quite a number of years. I am there responsible of European projects, in particular those in the context of Horizon Europe and in the context of the JU SNS. You have seen this morning the presentation by Colin describing the whole JU SNS, and here we will be talking about the so-called Lighthouse project. The Lighthouse is not a definition that we gave to ourselves, but it's the definition that was in the call proposal itself. And it follows this project almost 5 years of flagship projects that were those called EXA-X and EXA-X2. And I will try also to describe to you how this project is a sort of heir of these legacy projects that were EXA-X and EXA-X2. So let me introduce to you the generic usual slide about the structure of Sustain 6G. So it's a project that started this year, so started in January. So we are really at the very first steps. It's coordinated by Nokia Germany, and it has a technical manager from Orange. It has a budget of more than 1,000 person months, and it will last for 2.5 years. You may see that almost all the European countries are represented in this project because I said it should be a sort of lighthouse, as it is in the definition. So a panoramic view on the sustainability aspects of 6G. There are many vendors, so Nokia, of course, Ericsson, many operators, Orange, TIM, Telefonica, vertical industries. Why verticals? Because still in 6G we continue to talk about use cases, even if this has been successful up to a certain point so far. And we talk in particular here about telemedicine, about agriculture, about smart manufacturing. There are academia and small and medium enterprises, as in all the European projects. The objectives, so I will first show to you these slides because you know that all the European projects have a set of objectives. But then I will show you these same objectives in a more graphical way in the following slide. So in particular, as you may see, the general idea is to identify and understand the sustainability needs and values towards 6G. So you may be aware that sustainability has been a sort of keyword since the beginning in many let's say, preliminary presentations that were given almost everywhere, in particular by operators, but not only in the past years. And it still is something that, for example, in the 3GPP meeting started the standardization kickoff meeting in Korea last month was repeated by many players. In the project, we define methodologies, and in some way also we try to define terminology to talk about sustainability. You may see this as a sort of secondary aspect, but it is not, because there is still a little bit of confusion when we talk about sustainability. We try to include vertical use cases, and this is what we call 6G for sustainability, but we also try to integrate the sustainability into the definition of 6G, and this is what we call sustainable 6G. And of course, there are then other activities that will try to validate these solutions. But this is, as I've anticipated, a more graphical way to understand the idea behind the project. So first of all, let me tell you that it is important what is in the bottom left of this slide. So the global sustainability goals set by the United Nations. This is not something new, but this is also actually the only reference that could give a sort of common ground when we talk about sustainability. Because actually the sustainability is not the same all over the world, or at least is not felt in the same way all over the world. What is sustainable for us is somewhat useless in other countries. And so having a reference that is given by the United Nations themselves is really very important. Of course, not all the SDGs are equally important in our environment, but at least they represent a sort of final goal, final objective. We include, as we said, the stakeholders, and we include vertical sectors. So as I already mentioned, agriculture, energy, smart grid, and telemedicine. First idea is to collect all the needs, to put together the use cases, and to identify a terminology. This is a sort of entry point in our circle that then is based on these two parallel threads that are one, the use case designed for 6G for sustainability, and on the other hand, the sustainable 6G. Here you may see that we used this handprint and footprint terminology. This is a terminology that is quite well known, but probably not 100% clear. So in our first discussions, we are going to change these with first order effect and second order effect that will probably give a more precise idea of what handprint and footprint are, of course, positive or negative. Then there is the integration into proof of concepts. And finally, there is the validation and the cross-fertilization with other environments. So, of course, as every European project, Sustain 6G will try to cooperate with all the other projects of the same call, of other calls, and all the potential stakeholders of the same environment. When we talk about sustainability in particular, one thing that differentiates from the past is that in the past, sustainability was felt essentially as energy efficiency. And I am also quite involved in the topics of energy efficiency since many years, being in ETSI, in ITU, one of the rapporteurs of the specifications, for example, on the network level energy matrix. But the environmental aspect that is reported here, both for sustainable 6G and for 6G for sustainability, is only one of the aspects that this project would like to target. It's an important aspect because, of course, we need to provide the industry with a new system that, of course, shall not consume more than those that we have already, that shall be as energy efficient as possible. But this is not the only thing. Of course, if we think about a new system, this new system by itself, if it will come without any decommissioning, will end up in being more consuming than in the past. This is true, and this is something that we cannot deny. But this is also why we talk about economic and societal sustainability, because the new system shouldn't come at disproportionate cost and shouldn't come against any societal consideration. And this is, of course, something that we should apply not only to the perspective of what 6G will be, so in the perspective of sustainable 6G, but also in the perspective of what 6G can do for others. These things that I have repeated already many times are probably a little bit subtle concept, but they are key to identify potential benefits that 6G could introduce in the future. There are still many topics that in terms of sustainability we have to check. I have already talked about handprint and footprint. Another topic that we are targeting is that many solutions dealing with sustainability have a limited scope. So, for example, only energy efficiency or only access or only transport and so on. So the idea is to have a sort of holistic view as it is reported in the central box. And there are still some questions that are, I will say, unanswered, and that the project will try to give an answer to them. So what is sustainability? We have already told this. It is not only energy efficiency. This is the first answer. It is also sustainability in terms of economic and societal impact. But then we may also ask ourselves, how can 6G help to make vertical application sustainable? So in the direction of 6G for sustainability. But then how can sustainability be implemented? There are many ways, there are many things that can be studied, not only from the perspective of the technology, but also from the perspective of the implementation strategies, for example. I have already said that terminology is quite important. As we have said, we are trying not to use any longer handprint and footprint because this terminology is probably confusing. And it's something that you will see in our first deliverables that we changed a little bit this terminology. But also how we may quantify the sustainability. So what are the metrics that we should use? And what are the results that we may expect. And finally, there is also, and I would say it's one of the most important directions of research, and not only research, but as we discussed yesterday, also in the EXI-6G Monday conference, research should come to standardization at the end. So the project has a clear objective to provide the standards with something that can enable sustainability in the future. So the general idea is to have this sustainable 6G by design, and these boxes are also representing our work packages, essentially. As you know, all the projects have a structure, and the structure of this project is based on a work package dedicated to the definition framework, one dedicated to sustainable 6G, so all the methodologies that will improve sustainability internally, let's say, and then another work package that will try to describe what will be the impact externally. There will be because these work packages still to start, an assessment methodology, and finally we will have also some proof of concepts in the areas of healthcare, energy, smart grid, and agriculture. So 3 of them that will be shown, for example, already as a sort of anticipation at UCNC in June. So this was Sustain 6G, but just to tell you, since I am also involved and I play the same role also in as standardization and impact creation manager also in EXA-X2, I'd like to tell you that this Sustain 6G project doesn't come from nowhere, but has a clear legacy that is the one of EXA-X first. That was a project that started in 2021 and ended mid of 2023, and EXA-X2 that started in 2023 as a continuation of EXA-X and will continue until June this year. As you may see, also in these latest 5 years, EXA-X2 already introduced the same terminology that now is the basis for sustained 6G. So in EXA-X2, for the first time in the deliverables, in particular in Work Package 1, there were clear identification of not only environmental dimensions of sustainability, but also social and economic sustainability. And also there, we had the duality of 6G, sustainable 6G, and 6G for sustainability. By the way, there was also a first attempt of defining the so-called key values. You may know, probably, if you go to the discussions in 3GPP, in SA in particular, that there is now a discussion on the fact that a new dimension of evaluation of the use cases may be introduced, that is not only the one based on the performance of these use cases, but also on the values that they may bring. And the key value concept is, of course, related also to the key value indicators, even if this is a further step that is probably even harder to fulfill very soon. And EXA-X2 introduced the methodology that you may see is very similar, at least in terms of concept, to the one that we have in Sustain 6G, because it starts from a definition of use case. Also here, you may see that there is a double perspective, because there is a should be situation, as it is called in EXA-X2, that is the one of starting from the SDGs and then identifying the use cases. But very often it happens the opposite. And in any case, we start from a use case, from the description of that use case. We see if there are problems that may be solved through the implementation of this use case. And we see if a new system is needed to tackle the needs of this use case. If this is the case, we run a 6G sustainability evaluation. And this evaluation is a technical evaluation, that is the one that has been done since 2G. It's a business evaluation because, of course, business is a central part, but there is also this third dimension that is the sustainability evaluation. And the sustainability evaluation already in EXA-X2 was done into the 3 pillars. So efficiency, so environmental perspective, but also social domain and economic domain. Okay, that's all from my point of view. I try to describe to you Sustain 6G, having the roots laid into the EXA-X and EXA-X2 previous projects. Thanks a lot.